is behind hunting if I don't show
Yeah.
hunting scenes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's exact opposite.
Yeah. And so when you because the very first idea when it started like kind of happening for you, you were still campaigning with Sea Shepherd. You were still like working for Sea Shepherd at the time. Like you were still
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
ship.
yeah, yeah.
So
For I think a good chunk of the filming part, we were still on the ship because I got off the ship and we went to film Europe and then got back on the ship and the ship and then I got off the ship in Mexico and we went to film the North America part because it was quite close and like all of that stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
and also the stuff when we shoot Australia. Tim went to Australia to film it because he was coming back from Antarctica, and so he was already in Australia. And said like, okay, I have a couple of friends that they can come and film with you. Why don't you take the lead on the Australian side of the film? And he took care of filming and making the interviews down there.
Right, right,
So
right. So you had like, as you were
yeah,
saying, the global connection and the global team
yeah,
behind
yeah. And
your
Tim, the audio guy, knew exactly what I was looking for because he came with us doing the other interviews, so he knew the type
yeah,
of like
right, right.
lighting that we were looking for and all that sort of stuff. So it was great. Yeah.
And do you feel like when you look at the work that you do for Sea Shepherd and then doing this documentary, is it like the passion that you have for the work you do for Sea Shepherd, is that the same that you put in this movie? Like, or was it a very different project for you, or how do you feel about that?
I think without Sea Shepherd, this movie would have not happened at all, or would have been like a much slower process. First of all, I got passionate about photography and videography because on the Sea Shepherd ships, I met all these photographers that slowly taught me how to use a professional, like a DSLR rather than a point and shoot camera. And that was great. And also like all the activists that we met through the years on board and all the ethics that you encounter while you are on board of the Sea Shepherd ships. I mean, we have been on board the Sea Shepherd ships for 7.5 years, and you meet so many people from all around the world. We have seen on the documentary there is people that came after us on board of the Sea Shepherd ships, and then they left and they started their own organization, like Tommy, which came a young kid on board of the Sea Shepherd ships, and then he all of a sudden left and started a wildlife defense league, and then in a matter of like 2 or 3 years they shut down grizzly bear hunting in British Columbia. Like that's
Woohoo!
a like a
Yeah,
crazy story that
yeah,
so definitely Sea Shepherd has got a big link to
yeah. To
us
this
making
work.
this movie.
Yeah, well, as you were saying as well, of course, it also is so great because you had this network of people that could help you realize your dream, like doing this movie, and I think that's also it has helped you on so many levels. I would say, like that's really
Yeah.
that's
All
really
the
really
people that
great.
worked on the film, we all met them through Sea Shepherd,
Yeah,
most of them. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
And were there any? Is there anything that you learned also from doing this project, especially because you were doing it for the first time, that was really hard for you, or that you had like were there some big challenges doing all this? Like
Oh
what
my
were you?
God. There were definitely big challenges. I would say that economical challenge was the biggest.
Yeah.
Like, despite the fact that none of us was getting paid, the film costed a lot of money because we had to go around the world to meet these people, to follow them on campaign and stuff like that. And all these have got huge costs. Initially, I didn't have the part of the equipment we had to get for making the film. So that was a big expense as well because I didn't want to get like cheap stuff.
Yeah.
Not the cheapest that you can find. Another thing, definitely the post-production, the way how you write a movie, that has been a huge learning curve that I encourage anyone who wants to do a movie to look into this a lot sooner than I did. That, and also cataloging all the stuff that you get, like when like at the end of the film, like I thought like, oh, we're done. Like now we're just gonna slap everything together and it's gonna be finished. And we had like I think 8 or 9 terabytes of drives of just images that all needed to be cataloged, interviews that needed to be transcribed, and all that sort of stuff. That has been a huge task. And Rafa was huge, had a huge role in doing all this stuff. Like there is no way that I could have done it without Rafa, or she could have done it without me. Like it's been a real team effort to make this happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for the listeners, Rafa is the girlfriend, and we all love her. Like we keep mentioning Rafa, but yeah, Rafaela is also a very long, veteran of Sea Shepherd, and a chef and an amazing person. So yeah, we all love Rafa. It's so great that you guys were really in this together.
And I would say she's also a producer besides being
yeah, exactly. Yes, you can. Well, you both have way more to put on your resume these days.
Yeah, true.
You definitely have that. And because, do you feel like, Josh, would you do it again? Like, would you, from this project, like you're like, wow, yeah, I want to make more movies now? Or...
Now that I've learned all this stuff, I cannot wait to make another one without doing all the mistakes, with knowing how to film. Like I see some stuff now, I say like, oh, why did I do it like this? Like this, right? Like I'm very severe when it comes to my work, and now I really want to get on board of another project and start to, like do something else and in the same like documentaristic field.
Yeah, because I think Paul Watson, captain of Sea Shepherd, he says that a lot. Where he says that your biggest weapon is a camera, and that's really it's true, right? Like, isn't that? Do you like what you're doing now? I think is like showing these movies are so important because we need to shine a light on what's really going on in the world.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like this past maybe decade and a half has been a really good moment for I would say ethical awakening of people through knowledge. I feel like when I became vegan or when I got into animal rights at the beginning, maybe it's because I was a kid, but I feel like there were not enough information. General people didn't really care. While lately there has been kind of a ethical or green awakening. And that's also like one of the reasons why I wanted to do a documentary about wildlife and protecting wildlife is because there has been a huge string of documentaries about climate change, about plastic, about factory farming. And those are all topics that have become part of the general discussion. Everybody now knows the word vegan. When I became vegan, people were looking at me when I thought I was vegan, like I was an alien from another planet.
Exactly.
And I felt like, okay, like if we talk more about the hunting and the issues behind it and behind the poaching, like maybe this is a good time for people to understand that it is starting to become like 1 minute before midnight, before the collapse of everything, and people maybe will get it and maybe make a change. I don't know. I hope, but.
And could you put your finger on like, I don't know, maybe this is a hard question, but could you put your finger on like why are people still hunting? Like, is there one reason that is kind of the overall reason why it's still such a thing, or globally?
Well, hunting has got obviously different, like meanings behind it. And the one that we focus on is the kind of recreational hunting, poaching, and all that sort of stuff. We don't go against like indigenous hunt, for example, or something like that. But the way that I see hunting happening nowadays, looking at it from the point of view of my country and of most of the countries that I've visited, it is definitely partly tradition and partly domination. Is like these two factors play a big role. Many people, I met some hunters and they say like, I hunt because my grandfather was hunting here all the time, but then like in the last 50 years in Italy, for example, the expansion of urban areas and the destruction of natural habitats has been like catastrophic. So you cannot do the same things that our grandparents were doing. At the same time, in other places like still in Italy as well, but also like in the United States and stuff like that, there is this like thing like the animal belongs to the humans, I talked to a Republican representative in Wisconsin, and he didn't say this during the interview because he was very wary of how he was proposing himself. But after the interview, when talking, it says like, but like God put these animals on earth for men, and what do you reply to that? Like there's barely any conversation because there isn't like changing a person that has a religious belief is very, very hard. So these two have been like mainly the things, like that you can replicate almost anywhere you go. Like, like you go to Africa, there is trophy hunting because animals belong to me because I have money and I am supporting. Like there's this colonialism. I'm patronizing and supporting, spending money in a country that is poor. I'm supporting the local community or whatever. If in Italy it's like, oh, these birds, there is so many of them. There is an old recipe of food that involves this bird. I want to kill them. In UK, fox hunting goes the same way. Like like we have been doing for a long time, and it's a hobby that we do during our Saturdays and Sundays and holidays and stuff like that. Like it's just like that,
Yeah, so it is. I think you can definitely kind of nearly generalize hunting in that sense. That's really how people see it on a global level, and many different hunters see it like that. Like we don't belong to the earth belongs to them. They can take whatever they want to take, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, like we also go through on the documentary. We go through also a little bit of the psychology behind it, and like we say, like like the hunters are always the people that say that they are the people that love nature the most because they are the one that are exploited. So their interest is to make sure that there is more lions to kill or there is more bears to kill and stuff like that. But that is like a pretty difficult train of thoughts to follow, if you ask me.
Yeah. And do you feel that like what is your with this movie, what is your biggest dream or what is your biggest goal with this movie? Like why did you make it like mostly for that? Like what is that goal?
My biggest dream would be to get out of the animal rights community, to make sure that people that are not part of our circle will watch this movie and understand a little bit more of what's going on outside of the cities, because that's the thing, like we live mostly in cities and we don't really realize what's happening out there, and like hunting is this thing that is just out there and it's hard to figure like there is really bad impact that it has on the wildlife and on ourselves ultimately. And I'm really happy to say that I've been seeing a little bit of this already. Like the film has been selected in some festivals like Rain Dance, which is
it's amazing.
It's a film festival in London. It's not a documentary film festival. It's not an environmental film festival. It's just a general film festival. And I saw some people there that were not, like they were not aware of what was going on, and like they were surprised. But at the same time, I've seen people in the animal rights movement that see some part of the movie and say like, oh, I didn't know this thing was going on. Like there's a part about dog hunting dogs, like hounds, Spanish hounds, and how they are killed and mistreated, and like some people say like, oh, I didn't know that this was happening and there was at this scale and stuff like that. So I think every time there's someone that says I didn't know this, for me is a huge achievement.
Absolutely because
but the dream would be getting out of the animal rights.
Exactly. But don't you feel like I feel like especially also Netflix, but like also people like Keegan and more makers now, filmmakers make it, like, I think more mainstream people are looking at animal rights related or animal rights documentaries. Don't you? Do you feel that too? Like there's more like exposure
Definitely.
now? Yeah.